The Radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. The Radical. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this beautiful Saturday. Sun is shining, beaches are packed. Just a gorgeous day. Went for a nice walk by the ocean this morning. Sorry, Daniel. Sorry, Stephanie. You guys are suffering from rain, but you know what? You live in rainy places. You got to come over to Puerto Rico where the sun shines. It rains for like 5 minutes, and then the sun comes out again, and it's gone, and it's gone. All right, so today we got a bunch of topics. We're going to talk about Elizabeth Warren and Amazon. We're going to look at a video of some security guy claiming China is a security threat and talk about kind of the rationale. I'm seeing a lot of this kind of rationale around and where it comes from. We'll talk about moral dilemmas. Somebody referred me to a website that presents moral dilemmas, so we'll do a little quiz, moral dilemma quiz. Thanks, Ryan. Fund is getting there. We got a couple more $2,000, $3,000 more to go, but we will get there and we will get it done. But that's June 1's when I'm moving into the new condo, so we'll have it all set up before then. Let's see. And then of course we got the super chat. So don't forget to use super chats. March. Yeah, we're getting close to the end of March, so got to keep those numbers up. So don't be afraid to ask questions about anything. And of course, the more money you put in the question, the more likely it is to be answered quickly, and the more likely it is to be answered at all. Let's see. Yeah. Daniel doesn't believe that the weather is good in Puerto Rico. He wants a show from outside, and so when I move into the new condo, we'll take you on a little tour and show you the view, and we'll go out into the balcony and do a little show from the balcony. Maybe I'll do that on TikTok rather than on YouTube. YouTube is supposed to be this intellectual platform where you're supposed to talk about ideas. So maybe we'll use TikTok to show you the view from my condo. 31 days, but we're already on day 27. There we go. Thanks, Action Replay Person. What kind of a handle is that? Thank you. He says, I've been listening for a while. I love the show. Here's to that condo. I've been wondering what your stance on gun rights and how morality plays into that, because I've been trying to figure it out for a while. Whoa, you're jumping in, with your first Super Chat question, I think ever, with like a hornet's nest. Oh my God, gun rights. All right, I will get to that. I have to collect myself before I deal with gun rights, because it's one of those topics that half the objectivist movement wants to, maybe more than half the objectivist movement wants to fire me and wants to rid the world of me for my views on gun rights. So we'll cover that. We'll cover that before the end of the show. All right, we're getting some. Do you have some good references about? All right, we'll do that. I don't know what you mean by references, Alan. So all you have to do is, I did a show on COVID. I've done these talks on COVID. I just did it on Thursday. I streamed it live. I talk there extensively about government inefficiencies. All you have to do is look up how the government screwed up testing. So I guess there's so many references, I don't know where we would even start. Okay, so let's talk about Senator Elizabeth Warren, my all-time favorite, most evil senator in the Senate. She was If she had been the Democratic nominee, I might have actually brought myself to vote for Donald Trump. That's how evil I think she is. So Elizabeth Warren is, yes, I mean, the most vicious and the most, one of the most intellectual, so smart, but fascist, all-out fascist senators out there. And there was a series of tweets. So two things happened. One, a series of tweets in which Elizabeth Warren really revealed herself, I think, in an important way. But what is truly stunning, what is truly amazing, was truly reason for celebration. You know how I've always talked about the fact that corporations, if only they'd stood up for themselves, if only they'd defend themselves, if only they'd... Well, somebody, some alien has taken, or maybe some objectivist, has taken over, I'm convinced of this, taken over the official Amazon News Twitter feed and has been tweeting, I mean, mixed stuff, but like stuff that's 100,000 times better and standing up to Elizabeth Warren. And that is just mind-blowing. And I've been waiting for something like this to happen, and I don't think the world will change. I don't think we have any chance of cultural change until a lot of this happens, and much better than what Amazon is doing, but a lot of this happens. But it's stunning. So first, it started all of this started. So there's a series of tweets here. I'm going to walk you through what happened. So Elizabeth Warren, I guess it was 2 days ago, tweeted a video of her where she discusses tax policy, and she talked about, this is the tweet, right? So I'm going to read you the tweets. Giant corporations like Amazon report huge profits to their shareholders, but they exploit loopholes and tax havens to pay close to nothing in taxes. That's just not right. And it's why I'm introducing a bill to make the most profitable companies pay a fair share. Now, I think, you know that I think the fair share for successful large corporations is exactly zero, because they've been successful. And the fact that they're large means they're successful. And therefore it means that they've already contributed to all of our lives tremendously. Why would we tax them and inflict that pain on them on top of everything else? And of course, economically it makes no sense, because corporations don't pay taxes. They don't pay taxes because they pass those taxes on to shareholders a little bit, employees quite a bit, and customers a lot. So if you raise corporate taxes, you're raising prices, you're reducing wages, and a little bit, you're reducing the return on capital for shareholders. But the evidence is unequivocal. I mean, I don't think there are economists who would question this. So the only economic, moral, appropriate corporate tax rate is zero. And if you want to tax the people who, who receive these, corporate earnings. And you already do. Wages, capital gains, dividends, all of that is already taxed. Corporate taxes is in a sense, it's a double taxation on top of that. So of all the taxes out there, corporate taxes are probably the most stupid, economically inefficient, and morally offensive. Right? So I'm against all taxes, as you know, but this one is particularly bad. A flat tax is fine, but the corporate tax should be zero. Or if you're worried that people will shift money to their corporations or whatever, then make it zero for public corporations and make it equal to the personal tax rate for everybody else. Or find a way to get rid of that loophole. But, Anyway, Elizabeth Warren is complaining about basically loopholes and tax havens. Now, of course, I think it's the fiduciary duty of publicly traded corporations to maximize their tax savings, to exploit every loophole possible, to exploit every tax haven possible. It's their fiduciary duty to their shareholders to maximize the share price, which means to minimize tax expenses. But Elizabeth wants to condemn them for doing that. So this is Amazon's response. Now again, it's not an ideal response, right? I just gave you close to an ideal response. But at least it's a response. At least it's somewhat of Amazon standing up for itself. So here's what Amazon writes. This is Amazon News Twitter account, the official Amazon News Twitter account. You make the tax laws, Senator Warren. We just follow them. If you don't like the laws you've created, by all means, change them. Here are the facts. Before we get to that. So Amazon is saying, you make the tax laws. Why are you complaining? Which is true. Which is true. Now, of course, the response shouldn't be change them. The response should be, here's the morality of taxes. Here's what makes sense in terms of taxes. Here's what they should be. But okay, but at least Amazon is saying, don't blame us for abiding by laws you as a senator are responsible for. So that's point number one Amazon is making. Second, here are the facts. Amazon has paid billions of dollars in corporate taxes over the past few years alone. True. In 2020, we had another $1.7 billion in federal tax expense, and that's on top of $18 billion we generated in sales taxes for states and localities in the U.S. Congress designed tax laws to encourage investment in the economy. Well, if it designed tax laws to encourage investment, then taxes on a corporation like Amazon would be zero. Because what a waste to take money from the most productive members of our economy, successful corporations, and give it to the least productive members of our society, government. So every dollar that is saved by a loophole is a dollar that goes to productive activity in the U.S. economy. Point number three Amazon News makes, and this is not... So what have we done about it? About the investment in the economy? $350 billion of investments since 2010. $350 billion, that's a lot of money. 400,000 new U.S. jobs last year alone. 400,000 new jobs created in the United States during COVID. And while you're working on changing the tax code, can we please raise the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour? It drives me nuts that that's part of Amazon's PR, but it is. It's a huge part of Amazon's PR. Like, we pay our employees $15 an hour. You should, law should make that a requirement. So, Amazon, of course, why did Amazon even engage in $15 an hour minimum wage? It did it in order to appease its critics who came after it because it was not paying a living wage. And when it did raise their minimum wage to $15 an hour, they cut bonuses, they cut benefits for certain employees so that overall, the total costs didn't go up that much. And some employees actually got a wage cut because even though they made less than $15 an hour, they made more on bonuses, and those bonuses were trimmed. So Amazon is being inconsistent, obviously. But this is where I think it really gets better. So Amazon is saying, look, you wrote the laws, we're following the laws, we invest the money, we create jobs, we're doing an amazing job, What do you want from us, Elizabeth Warren? If you want to change the laws, go change the laws. Take responsibility. This is Elizabeth Warren's response. Now, I thought that Amazon News response was okay. You know, Amazon News said, you make the laws, Senator Warren. We just follow them. If you don't like the laws you've created, by all means, change them. Here's Elizabeth Warren's response. I didn't write the loopholes you exploit, Amazon. Your armies of lawyers and lobbyists did. But you bet I'll fight to make you pay your fair share, and fight your union busting, and fight to break up big tech. Why? So you're not powerful enough to heckle senators with snotty tweets. Oh my God. This is a U.S. senator responding to Amazon. She didn't write the loopholes. Who did? Who did? Really? The armies and lawyers and lobbyists did? No, Senator. It's your frigging responsibility to write the loopholes. And if you didn't write them, then who did? Why weren't you involved? It's your job, not the lobbyists. How much were you paid off not to write the loopholes? And Senator, did you vote against all these bills? Can we see the track record? Even Obama's bills that kept the loopholes that you voted for? Don't tell us it's lawyers and lobbyists as if you, as a United States Senator, have no responsibility for the laws passed under your watch. No, Senator Warren, you are responsible. Now, I love the loopholes. I think they're great. But then she says, she's going to make you pay your fair share. Who gets to decide what the fair share is? Elizabeth Warren. She's going to make you bust up your unions. Why? Because she decided so. And she's a politician. And you're just a productive individual creating 400,000 jobs. God forbid. She is going to tell you how to run your company. She is going to tell you how to deal with your unions. And here's where she's channeling, and I know you don't like to hear this, but here she's channeling Donald Trump. And fight to break up big tech. So you're not powerful enough to heckle senators with snotty tweets. Isn't every American powerful enough to heckle senators with snotty tweets? Isn't the whole point of the First Amendment that every American has an inalienable right protected by our Constitution to heckle senators with snotty tweets? Isn't that the very essence of what it means to have free speech? Isn't that the very essence of the First Amendment? I mean, what we should all be doing, this is a call to action to all objectivists and free market advocates out there, all people who believe in free speech, all people who believe in any kind of freedom, please, 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 go on Twitter. Even if you just do this once, go on Twitter and write a snotty tweet to Senator Elizabeth Warren. Please. This is how you fight for freedom. Make a stand. She is explicitly engaged in threatening an American company not to stand up to her because she is a senator. Well, Elizabeth Warren, screw you. You're my servant, not my lord, not my boss, not my overseer, not my philosopher king. You're supposed to serve the people, including Amazon, including its 1.4 million employees, including me, including all the people listening to the show who I hope are going to go on Twitter. Please, I'm serious. and just tweet to Elizabeth Warren a snotty tweet on any topic you want. Make it respectful, but make it snotty. I mean, this is the Senate. Now, Trump did this all the time. So Elizabeth Warren, that's why I said she's channeling Trump. Trump would attack Amazon and talk about breaking it up because the Washington Post, owned by Jeff Bezos, wrote nasty things about him. But this is horrific coming from any politician in a position of power. This is a violation of the First Amendment. So stand up. Stand up. And fight it. Thank you, Naruto. But what's really cool is that Amazon News responded. And this has to be one of the most important, best, powerful tweets by a major, big business that I've ever seen. Amazon should get, I don't know, a prize, Amazon News. Whoever runs Amazon News, thumbs up to this tweet. This tweet is amazing. Everybody go find this tweet, like it, and retweet it. This is what Amazon News wrote in response to Elizabeth Warren. This is extraordinary and revealing. One of the most powerful politicians in the United States just said she's going to break up an American company so that they can't criticize her anymore. That is so good. I'll read that again to you because it's so good. Amazon, I loved you before. I love you more now. And please, get some prize to Amazon News, to the employee who runs this. We need to get them a copy of Atlas Shrugged. This is extraordinary and revealing. One of the most powerful politicians in the United States just said she's going to break up an American company so that they can't criticize her anymore. All right. Go retweet that. Go like that. And go heckle, write snotty tweets to Elizabeth Warren. I mean, if you really got serious about this, you would write Elizabeth Warren a snotty tweet every day. Like, if people want objectivists to get into memes and GIFs and whatever, here's a good project for you guys. Do a snotty meme every day to Elizabeth Warren. You might actually get, they might actually go viral, and you might actually get a really good response. Like, let the juices flow. And if you do one that's particularly you're proud of, CC me on the tweet so I can see it. Right? We need a Twitter army. I was just talking about this with Brad Thompson the other day, and he said, "Why don't we have an objectivist Twitter army? Like, BAP has one of these Twitter armies. The left has these cancel culture armies. Others have these Twitter armies. Why can't we, objectivists? Why can't some of you young objectivists who know how to do these memes and GIFs and whatever?" Yeah, Jacob, it's time to get back on Twitter. It's time to join the fight. Thank you, can't pronounce something, Corp. Appreciate the support. Why can't we have a Twitter army, and every time Elizabeth Warren just raises her head in Twitter, the army descends on her? I don't know, is the FBI going to start monitoring my channel? I am hereby declaring that trolling, is trolling the right term? Elizabeth Warren is a virtue. You get like objectivist stars. Oh, no, you don't get objectivist stars. Let's keep Ayn Rand out of it. You get Yaron Brook stars. Yeah, let's cancel Elizabeth Warren. Let's give her hell for wanting to silence Amazon and threatening them with breaking them up. All right, guys. Yeah, that's right, Daniel. General Yaron Brook. I never made it beyond first sergeant in the Israeli army, but Daniel's just promoted me to general of the Yaron Brook Twitter army, dedicated to eradicating threats to liberty on Twitter. Hey, Corey, it's great to see you. Thank you for the support. That's great. Really appreciate that. Thank you. So, yes, applauds, like, retweet, support Amazon News, not for supporting a minimum wage, but for their standing up to Elizabeth Warren. I think it's terrific. I really do. So I hope you do too. All right. I mean, we really need kind of an army that when people mock Ayn Rand or people make fun of objectivism or make fun of an objectivist, that like these Twitter objectivists just, in a nice, respectful, philosophical way, right? All right, Travis says he tweeted, heckle senators? Question mark. Isn't that a First Amendment right? You deserve the heckling. You deserve to be criticized. Excellent. Thank you. Good job, Travis. Composing my respectful but very snotty tweet now. Thank you, Bonnie. Excellent. Excellent. Good. Go after her. I mean, this is unforgivable. And the fact is that Amazon News has only been retweeted like 1,800 times, only been liked 8,491 times. I mean, the Amazon News tweet should be in the millions. It should be viral. It's an amazing. I mean, Walter Olson writes to Amazon News, thank you for standing up to a bully intent on abusing her Senate post. Haven't agreed with every Amazon decision, right? But from today, I'll start following Amazon News. I followed Amazon News. You guys should follow Amazon News. All right. Cool. I see some objectivists already commenting on Elizabeth Warren even before I asked you to, so thank you for doing that. Double up. Keep going. Go at it. Give her comments. Let's see how many people have commented. Yeah, I don't think enough people have commented on mostly objectivists, it looks like, but we need more. Many, many more. Many, many more. All right. Good. Snow in. All right, let's see. Where do I want to go from here? Somebody asked about the Suez Canal. Let me just say something quickly. I was gonna say something about the Suez Canal today. So there's this massive ship. It's massive. It's one of these super container ships that has run aground in the Suez Canal and is, I just remember an Israeli military intelligence war story I could tell you. Do you want to hear an Israeli military? I wonder if I'd be violating any secrecy laws in Israel if I told you the story about running aground. That could be interesting. I don't know who's gonna put some good super chat money on the table so that I tell you some Israeli. I'm trying to think of all the details of the story, but yeah, running aground. Just the Suez Canal running aground right now. It just flashed in front of me. This experience that I had in the Israeli army. Okay, I'll tell you that story after I tell you about, particularly if somebody puts in a good amount on the super chat, I definitely will tell you. But let me see if I. There you go. Ryan's put in $20 American in for that. So I'll tell you. But let me start with the Suez Canal. Massive ship ran aground the Suez Canal. The Suez Canal is, it's hard to emphasize enough the importance of the Suez Canal to global trade. I mean, it is the major link between Asia, China, India, Singapore, Taiwan, South Korea, all the industrial nations of Asia, and Europe. Basically, all the imports from China and from all those other Asian countries coming to Europe go through the Suez Canal. It's so much cheaper than going around the Horn of Africa. And this is why it was built, because it's a massive shortcut to allow trade between Europe and Asia, which is a massive benefit to Europe and Asia. So stopping the Suez Canal is a massive disruption to global trade, a massive disruption to wealth creation and to both Asia and Europe. I don't know how much trade goes through the Suez Canal that comes to the United States, because I think most of it goes through the Pacific to either San Francisco or Los Angeles, or through the Panama Canal to the East Coast. So I don't know what the numbers are, but I assume some of the trade goes through the Suez Canal to the United States. So this is a massive disruption. But think about it. Who is responsible for the Suez Canal? Who maintains it? Who maintains its depth, its widths? Who maintains the pilot boats that pilot these massive ships through the canal? Who maintains the functioning of one of the most, maybe the most important narrow shipping lane in the world, in the entire world? Now you say Egyptians, but who do these Egyptians actually work for? Well, the Egyptian government does. Scott says the UK, Andrew says the UK, and neither of those are true. It's the Egyptian government. Now, I don't know how many of you know the story of the Suez Canal, but the Suez Canal was dug by the British and the French. It was dug by private corporations. I think, I don't have the whole history in front of me, but late 19th century, early 20th century, when Egypt was under, basically British control, call it. And it was a joint French-British project, basically because it was massively important for the British and the French to increase trade between Europe and Asia. So this is a 19th century project built privately by French and British businesses. And indeed, those French and British businesses ran the Suez Canal. They owned the Suez Canal. They took revenue out of the Suez Canal, maintained the waterway, made sure it was deep enough, made sure it was wide enough. Through 1956. And then in 1956, a military dictator of Egypt, Nasser, N-A-S-A-A-R, something like that, right? Nasser nationalized the Suez Canal. He just stole it from British and French legit corporations, businesses, The Suez Canal was private. No, it wasn't Anthony Eden who screwed it up. Because Anthony Eden, together with, I don't know who was president of France at the time, maybe it was Charles de Gaulle, actually sent troops. They parachuted troops onto the Suez Canal. They occupied both sides of the Suez Canal, drove back the Egyptian military, and basically declared that they were going to defend the private property of French and British corporations to this vital national interest of both France and England. Israel, at the same time, in coordination with the French and the British, invaded the Sinai, which had been a hornet's nest of terrorism, supported and supplied by the Egyptians that were crossing over the border in the Negev in the south of Israel and killing Americans. And Israel took the Sinai Desert in 1956. The the French and the British held the Suez Canal. And I can't remember how long they stayed there, but not very long. Why? Why did they leave? Who forced them to leave? Certainly not the Egyptian military, which both Israel had whipped and the British and French had whipped. Who, I ask you on the Super Chat, who forced them to leave the Suez Canal, to hand it over to the Egyptian authorities, Israel to evacuate the Sinai Desert? Jimbo, Nicholas, you are right. It was the United States of America, the Eisenhower administration. President Eisenhower, oh my God, a Republican. How can this be true? I thought Republicans were pure good. Eisenhower forced them to retreat. By the way, this was a signal to Saudi Arabia and to Iran that they could go ahead and continue to nationalize American oil in those places, and America would do nothing about it. Right. So Eisenhower forced everybody to back away. Israel backed out of the Suez Canal, backed away from the Sinai Desert with the agreement that the United Nations would occupy the Sinai Desert and that the Egyptians were banned, outlawed, from bringing troops into the Sinai Desert that could threaten Israel. That all changed, if you just a little bit more of history, in 1967, in the spring of 1967, where Nasser, the same Nasser, ordered massive numbers of troops into the Sinai Desert and massed them on the Israeli border, in spite of the barring by the Americans and by the United Nations. He told the UN to go take a hike. And that's what led to the 1967 war, which is known as the Six-Day War. Right. Yeah, Eisenhower was the establishment. Who wasn't exactly the establishment? All right, so, oh good, I'm seeing a bunch of you have ridden Senator Warren. Good for you. Good for you. So that was, okay, so my take on the Suez Canal is it should be French and British. It should be in private hands. There should be a profit motive to keeping it running well. What was Eisenhower's rationale? Good question, Richard. Richard usually doesn't ask me good questions, but this is a good question. I'm sorry if I'm insulting you, Richard, but sometimes you're a pest on the chat. Why did Eisenhower support the withdrawal, or not support, basically encourage, twist the arm of the French and the British to retreat? I wonder if anybody knows. the official reason was, and I think this was the real reason, but this is what's called realpolitik. The reason was that Nasser was courting the Soviet Union. And the United States was afraid that Egypt would come under the sway, under the influence of the Soviet Union. Nasser was considering building a massive dam, the Anwar Dam, and was considering different companies, including American and Soviet companies, to build that dam. And Eisenhower figured that if he'd go in with Nasser on this one, Nasser would then not go in with the Soviets and become a friend of the United States. Guess what happened? Nasser said, good that you kicked out the French and the British and the Israelis. We're going to go with the Soviets anyway. And Nasser became basically a satellite of the Soviet Union. It became a huge friend of the Soviet Union. The Soviets built the dam. They provided the Egyptians with massive quantities of weapons. Indeed, Egypt and the Soviet Union were buddy-buddy right up to the early 1970s, up until the Yom Kippur War in 1973, after which Egypt slowly started moving away and started moving towards the United States. And the United States started giving, and then after the peace agreement between Egypt and Israel, the United States started giving Egypt as many billions of dollars a year as they do to Israel. And I find it interesting that people always complain about all the money Israel gets from the United States as foreign aid. What about all the money Egypt gets, right? So, I forgot about my army story. Anyway, that's why they did it. They did it as part of the Cold War, but it failed, as most of the stuff they did during the Cold War, most of their attempts to manipulate were all wrong and distorted. All right, let's see. So when I was in military intelligence, one of the regions I would monitor was Saudi Arabia. And I can't remember when this was exactly, but probably 1981 or 82, an Israeli warship was coming up at night on the Red Sea. Now, I don't know how much geography you guys know, but the Red Sea is a narrow sea. And at the edge of the Red Sea, half is Israel and half is Jordan. And the two coasts, most of the way up on the Red Sea, this is the narrow part of the Red Sea, one side, the eastern side, is Saudi Arabia, and the western side is Egypt. But then it turns into Israel and Jordan. So this Israeli warship is traveling up the Red Sea on the way to Eilat, which is a port, small port city, but it has a small naval base of Israel, and it's traveling up, and it goes aground on the Saudi coast. And we're alerted to it, because one of the things we're doing is monitoring area photography. We do area photography monitoring. We monitor troop movements and monitor any kind of activity that goes on in a place like Saudi Arabia. So they run aground on Saudi coast. Now, the Saudi coast is desert. There's nothing there. And, so we spent a whole night monitoring intelligence of whether the Saudis had figured this out, that they had a high-tech, really super sophisticated Israeli ship that run aground on their land, whether they were sending troops, while monitoring Israeli efforts, sending in, special forces ships to protect the ship and then try to get it back onto the sea lane. And I can't remember how long this lasted, but it was this unbelievable suspense of whether the Saudis were going to come and there was going to be, a little battle there, or whether, and we were monitoring them. And the Saudis figured it out. By the time they figured it out, and given how big Saudi Arabia is, by the time they started moving people there, moving troops there, the Israelis had gotten the ship off the thing and it was back. And then the question, of course, arose, why did it run aground? Because the Red Sea is wide enough that you shouldn't be running aground. And I think the conclusion was, again, this is my recollection, I don't remember exactly, that the navigator, captain were distracted, either by alcohol or by girls, I don't know. But it was a military ship, so probably alcohol. Anyway, not good. It was not good for Israel. Not good. I don't remember if it made the press. Not good for its image, not good for... And it was interesting, but a lot of suspense for us, and, kind of fun, because mostly in the military it's boring. And this was kind of very suspenseful, lots of action, lots of engagement, lots of intelligence in real time. And, nobody died. So it's kind of I can tell you other stories about my time in intelligence where people died. And it was a lot, the good guys died, and it was a lot less fun. But for the right amount of money, I can tell military intelligence stories sometimes. Not just hitchhiking stories. I can tell military intelligence stories too. But another time we'll do that. I don't remember if I've ever told you the story of me going to Beirut, or driving around southern Lebanon, or any of my other cool military intelligence Israeli army stories from a long time ago. So I think the statute of limitations on intelligence stuff is over. All right, let's see. What else do we want to talk about? Oh, yes, we want to talk about China's security threat. All right, so China's security threat. So we're going to do this. Somebody sent me this video and asked me to comment. So I figured, why not? I'll do the Beirut story. Beirut story is like, you got to do $100 to get the Beirut story. I mean, some of these stories are too, I don't know. Nothing was as bad as that hitchhiking trip. Let me say that I think the Beirut story, I took my life into my hands more than on the hitchhiking trip. Talked about carrying a message. No, I wasn't carrying a message. Anyway, let's see. We're going to go here. So somebody sent me this video about this analyst talking about China as a security threat. I thought it would be good to analyze, how today we are looking at threats and what constitutes threat. I also think this is interesting in terms of it says American self-esteem. It says American confidence. I think the story of the last 20 years, the story of America over the last 20 years, if you want to think of the historical arc of the last 20 years, and it's not an arc because that hasn't closed yet, but the direction in which the American culture has been heading over the last 20 years, I think the theme is the loss of American exceptionalism, the loss of American confidence, the loss of American self-esteem. You could start that with 9/11, and you can carry it forward to today. We don't believe in ourselves. We don't believe in our value. This is true throughout the Trump presidency. America is not exceptional. America is not special. Tucker Carlson, America is a great country because it has great scenery. It's just a beautiful country. That's what makes it great, right? I did a show on that. We've lost what it means to say America is exceptional. We've lost what it means to say we can do anything. We've lost what it means We can achieve all. We are the leader of the world. We're ahead of everybody else. All that is gone. And it's gone because of the mixed economy, more than just economy, because of the mixed economy philosophy that we live under. The United States now, when the Chinese accuse us, as they did a week ago, of being a racist country, our diplomats can't defend themselves. Can't defend themselves. Can't stand up for America. Nobody stands up for America. Presidents can't. So I think since 9/11, America's in decline internally, in a sense of our own sense about ourselves. And it's on the left and it's on the right. It's on both sides. Right? The right can't define what makes America America. So it can't defend it. So it can't view it as exceptional because it doesn't know. That's a good question, Andrew. We'll get to it. All right, so let's look at this to some extent from the perspective of that question of American confidence. Let's see. Oh, no, I'm pressing the wrong button. There we go.
Huawei and U.S. tech firms want to bring in someone who's been very outspoken about the security issues posed by the Chinese tech giant. Robert Spalding, senior fellow at the Hudson Institute, joins us this morning. It is great to see you again, Rob. You just heard the report from Elon, and you think what?
Well, I think one of the things that we found in the national security strategy is that the way you look at national security in a globalized, internet-powered world is that militaries were designed to protect the population from undue influence from foreign bodies.
No, militaries was not designed to protect the population from undue influence from foreign bodies. This is the slippery slope. This is super dangerous. Militaries are not there to protect you from undue influence. What does that even mean, undue influence? Militaries are there to protect you from violations of your rights. Violations of your right means a threat to your life or to your property. Restricting your ability to move, restricting your freedom, not undue influence. Militaries don't get involved in influence. Militaries are involved in blowing stuff up and killing people and protecting the population from other people doing it to you. So, framing the enemy as somebody that's going to inflict undue influence on you means that you have the right to use force against them. Means the First Amendment is out the window. It's gone. Elizabeth Warren just won the battle. So, you have to frame things accurately. You have to think about these things objectively.
Saw, especially after the 2016 election, the Russians were able to use big data analysis, artificial intelligence, and social media networks to create protests in the United States.
They didn't create protests in the United States. They provided misinformation. But who created the protest? The people who read it, the people who believed it, the people who didn't fact check, the people who rushed to action without thinking. You are responsible for the information you consume, for the actions you take based on the information you consume. If you act rashly on false information without checking it, it's your responsibility. Yes, the Russians tried to influence the U.S. election in 2016 and 2020. And they probably did to some extent. But that's our fault. Is the American military now going to protect us from people with bad ideas, with bad information?
Type of behavior is accelerating. So when you combine the might of Huawei with Chinese large tech companies that are starting to really grow, especially with you look at the stock rises with the new bang market up today, there's a big challenge with preventing undue influence of your society using these technologies and these business models.
So we shouldn't worry about the Chinese military and the military threat the Chinese pose. What we really should be worried about is the technological threat that companies might unduly influence what we do.
Take the devil's advocate position only at least to have this debate, which is to say, you look at what's happening in the United States with tech companies in America and their role with the military, and there's lots of people who have come out and said that Google and Amazon and others aren't being patriotic enough because they're not participating with the U.S. government. And yet there are also all sorts of programs that have been going on for the past century, frankly, between U.S. companies and the U.S. government.
So he is making a moral equivalency between the U.S. government and the Chinese government. Well, our businesses cooperate with the government. Why shouldn't Chinese businesses work with the Chinese military? That's a bogus argument.
Well, I think what's different today is if you look just at the market in China, for instance, you see no major telecom providers. Of course, there is no major equipment manufacturers that are American anymore. You see none of the major tech companies able to even operate in China. And so what happens is China basically creates a fortress to grow their companies, to create market dominance with their own country, and then uses subsidies, basically non-market-based activity, to allow them to gain global dominance.
So here's the point, right? If you believe in markets, if you believe in capitalism, if you believe in competition, does building a fortress, protecting your country's companies from competition, subsidizing them, is that going to create the best companies in the world? Is that going to create market dominance? If so, then why don't we all do it? If so, why are we advocating for capitalism? If Chinese companies are the best technologically because the government supports them, because they get subsidies, because they're protected from competition, then shouldn't we do the same thing? No. Surely we need to defend ourselves against the Chinese government. But are we worried about Chinese companies being better than American companies because they get subsidies? I believe in markets. If the Chinese want to subsidize their companies, it probably means that they can't compete. The subsidies are going to be used inefficiently, and they're going to create competitors that are not as efficient or productive, particularly in tech, which requires the freedom to innovate, to think out of the box. So, and this leads to conservatives wanting the United States to adopt Chinese industrial policy because they believe that it works in China. That China's better than us. That China's more successful than us. That Chinese companies are going to be and defeat us. If Huawei is putting up equipment in the United States that is being used for Chinese spying, then of course that should be stopped. Who would object to that? And if they are caught actually doing that, they should be banned from ever doing business in the United States or anywhere in the Western world. But this wishy-washy, we're afraid of Chinese technology companies because China's so good, really? It shows how weak we are. Our technology companies are better, more innovative, more productive. We're faced with some competition. Again, caught spying, off with their heads. Then what is it about? If it's not about spying, and it's not about Chinese companies being better, then what is it about? I don't want subsidies, but I can't control China not providing subsidies. And what about American companies getting subsidies? What about European companies getting subsidies? Canadian companies? Every country in the world gives subsidies. Oh, they've got files on American personnel because they hacked the U.S. systems because America doesn't protect its systems well enough. Not because we use Chinese equipment. If a country doesn't attack us, it's not an enemy. Government has no business in telling you can't trade with them.
About creating global champions.
Okay, but
They're going to create global champions by subsidizing them? In a competitive, innovative market? Is that what we believe? Is that what American capitalism has come to? We're so confident in our system. We're so confident in America that we think a bunch of Chinese bureaucrats are going to make better companies than we have. If the CCP has attacked us, then we should attack them back. I've said we should withdraw our embassy from China. We should bring our diplomats home. And we should attack them using cyber technology and crush them. Fine. It's not what he's talking about. We're talking about what he's talking about.
that's an economic argument, right? I could make the
it's an
economic argument that what you want to do is slow Huawei down to give some room for U.S. companies who may actually be behind to the degree you believe that.
Really? So again, this is the argument. They subsidize, so we'll subsidize. They subsidize, so we'll slow them down so we can catch up because we're so terrible. So terrible. How can a big percentage of what they do be subsidized? Where do they get the money for that? Chinese economy is smaller than the U.S. economy. They have a lot more people on a per capita GDP. Their economy is puny as compared to ours. Where do they get the money to subsidize? The companies have to actually make a profit so that they can tax it so that the government has any money. If they operate on a loss, then where is the profit that allows, where the tax money, where's the money that allows China to subsidize? The money has to come from somewhere. Do Chinese companies run at a loss? Chinese tech companies? Really? Are you sure of that? How many? Yeah, I know the Chinese are suffering. But really, the Chinese suffer relative to how they used to live? Have you ever been to Shanghai? You ever been to Dongguan or Guangzhou or Shenzhen? Really? You guys should travel a little bit and see the world.
By the way, I'll tell you, the AT&Ts and Verizons of the world will tell you that they are not. But to the degree that that's the argument, that's an economic one. It's not a national security one.
I agree with him.
Now we're back to
completely.
This whole dispute around trade, which is Huawei a national security threat, or is this just a pawn in some trade negotiation?
Well, that's a point that I'm trying to make, is economics are tied with national security now.
No, they're not. You can't confuse the two. And what you do when you do that, what happens when you confuse economics and national security is that it's an excuse for the nationalists on the right to get involved in economics for national security reasons. Why do we have tariffs on steel? For national security reasons. Why? I mean, Trump was considering putting tariffs on European cars for national security reasons. Conflating economics with national security is an unmitigated disaster. Should never be done. When you conflate those things, you're giving the status an excuse to engage in intervention in the economy for national security reasons. And they say it over and over and over again. If there's a real national security threat, deal with it. And I am all for dealing with national security threats. I'm all for national security threats. But when the right becomes the left, in a sense that we know the left wants to manage the economy, but now the right uses national security threats to regulate the economy, and then there's nobody even giving lip service to this. I understand this idea of unrestricted warfare. I don't believe in the idea of unrestricted warfare. There is no economic element to unrestricted warfare. Warfare is warfare. Warfare involves putting the lives of people in danger. It does not involve building a superior product and beating your competitor in the marketplace. That is not warfare. I know the Chinese think of it in those terms, but that is not what anybody who is an advocate of free market should think of. There is no economic warfare aspect to the USSR. No. The aspect of the USSR was a moral aspect. It was an evil country that was a threat to the United States, so you don't trade with them. If you come to the conclusion that China is an existential threat to the United States, then we shouldn't trade with them at all. I mean, we're way ahead of China on 5G. There's no national security threat in 5G. There's no national security threat. There's AI used for warfare as a national security threat. We should build up defenses. Bioterrorism, whatever, used to attack us is a national security threat. Just them getting better at getting better at AI is not a national security threat. All right. Aggression is very clear. I mean, you stealing property, like information about people, like what they do when they hack, and that should be considered an act of war and should be dealt with as an act of war, and there should be real consequences to things like that. If you invade, if you kill, if you restrict movement, that's an act of war. That's warfare. Developing technology, trading, is not an act of warfare. It's not an act of warfare. Exporting fentanyl is not an act of warfare. Fentanyl should be legal. So it should be openly traded. That's not an act of warfare. For every exporter, there has to be an importer. There has to be a buyer. If you've got a problem with fentanyl, blame the buyers. If you stop buying fentanyl, nobody will sell it. The solution to drugs is not to go to war over them, as we've been trying to do with the war on drugs. It's to legalize them. So China's an authoritarian regime doing evil things primarily to its own people. It is ultimately a relatively weak country the more authoritarian it becomes. The more it subsidizes, the more it controls, the more it manages technology, the weaker it becomes. The only way the CCP is picking us apart is because of our weakness. It's because we are becoming like them. We're imitating them. You want America to beat the CCP? It's easy. Lower tariffs to zero. Stop subsidizing everything. Drop regulations to zero. Increase freedom in America is the solution. All right, but I'm never going to convince the people who are obsessed with the evil of China, which, basically I agree with it as a regime, but I don't think people understand what is going on inside China. And even the stuff about foreign countries, what is actually going on in these other countries in terms of Chinese influence. I think there's very little understanding, and I think there's a lot of propaganda. A lot of propaganda. But if you look at China, if you think China is like the Soviet Union, if you think China treats its own people like the Soviets did, then you've never been to China and you don't know what communism was like under Mao and in the Soviet Union. Maybe diversity isn't a strength, but China is very diverse. China is an incredibly diverse country. So how... Yes, blame people's color of their skin for American weakness. That's the problem. We're not white enough. God. This country is falling apart on my chat, right in front of my eyes. All right, let's see. All right, next topic. Somebody sent me this thing about moral dilemmas. I thought this would be fun. So this is fun, all right? So let's see. So we're going to look at these moral dilemmas from an objectivist perspective. And we're going to go here. So this is the website. It's called Philosophy Experiments. We're only going to do 4 questions. These are the 4 preliminary questions just to get you into the role. It says, this activity is a treatment of some of the issues thrown up by a thought experiment called the trolley problem in ethics, which was first outlined by philosopher Philippa Foot and then developed by Judith Jarvis, Thompson, and others. But before we start properly, we need to ask you 4 preliminary questions so we get a sense of the way that you think about morality. There are no right or wrong answers. No right or wrong answers in morality. That's interesting. Just select the option that most corresponds with your view. I'm going to, but let me tell you, my view is right. All right, question number 1. Torture, as a matter of principle, is always morally wrong. What do you guys say, yes or no? I want to see yes or no in the chat. As a matter of principle, is always morally wrong. Are you on the Jack Bauer side of this? Are you on, where are you, right? Is torture ever appropriate? Can you think of any context in which torture would be appropriate? I can. Lots of them. I have no problem with torture under the right circumstances, under the right context. In war, with terrorism, I'm an advocate of the Jack Bauer school of torture. If somebody has the information about a nuclear bomb that's going to go off in my city, they're a bad guy, and they're not willing to disclose the information. It means they're evil. It means they have no rights. It means they deserve nothing. Zero, zilch. They're subhuman. If they're willing to sit on information that its disclosure would save the lives of hundreds of thousands, they are not human and don't deserve human rights. The answer is no. There's absolutely context in which torture is appropriate. Judicially, it should not be wrong. There should be clear, objective exemptions under the law for the circumstances under which torture is appropriate. When it is essential for getting information that will save people's lives. So, I have no problem. American intelligence forever tortured. Israeli intelligence did. Others do. Because it's an effective way of getting information from bad guys. Now, you have to be very careful. You have to be it has to be, judiciously, it has to be tightly controlled. But look, watch 24, the TV series 24, and you tell me Jack Bauer's not right to do what he does. So I got into trouble with lots of people around this issue because I believe that torture can be appropriate in the right circumstances. Question number 2. The morality of an action is determined by whether, compared to other available options, it maximizes sum total of happiness of all people affected by it. So your action is moral if it maximizes happiness relative to others or doesn't. Opinions. Is this a yes or no? Should the morality of an action be determined by whether it achieves the maximum total happiness? Well, I mean, this is objectivism 101. We are not utilitarians. We are not utilitarians. No. The morality of an action has to do with its effect on you, on your life, on your values, not on the sum happiness of other people. This assumes altruism as the moral code without even questioning it. No. Answer is no. Question number 3. It is always and everywhere wrong to cause another person's death, assuming they wish to stay alive, if this outcome is avoidable. Is that true? It is always and everywhere wrong to cause another person's death if it's avoidable. No, I can think of lots of circumstances where it's appropriate to cause another person's death. In self-defense, in a war of self-defense, even in punishing somebody who's clearly unequivocally a murderer and has lost the right to his own life. So no, self-defense is the key here. If you can save the lives of innocent people, without reducing the sum total of human happiness, and without putting your own life at risk, you are morally obligated to do so. Yes or no? If you can save the lives of innocent people without reducing the sum total of human happiness and without putting your own life at risk, are you morally obligated to do so? No. Morality is about the pursuit of your own values, your own happiness. It's not about other people's happiness, unless other people's happiness affects yours. It's not about some total utility for the rest of the world. It's not about any of these things. It's about you pursuing your values. Now, often, saving the lives of innocent people is appropriate, but not always. And it can be morally obliged. The only thing you're morally obliged to do is to pursue your interests, your values. Often, that will be consistent with saving the lives of innocent people. Not always. I can think of lots of cases right now. You could take money out of your pocket right now, instead of using it to support the Yaron Brook Show, send it to Africa to feed X number of starving kids. That would save the lives of innocent people. It wouldn't put your life at risk, and yet you shouldn't be morally obligated to do so. I don't do it. What's interesting is the summation of this, right? Torture, you get 65% no, 35% yes. Doesn't surprise me. Most people are against torture. Maximize happiness. Almost 50-50. Cause of death, always wrong. It's always wrong to cause somebody's death, even in self-defense. That's ridiculous. And of course, you're absolutely morally obligated to save the lives of innocent people. 77% of people who took this survey think that. That's the one that's most overwhelming. That's the one that's most altruistic. That's the one that tells you everything you have to know. Because if you don't do it, if you don't send that chick to Africa, if you don't do whatever you can in order to save the lives of innocent people, you feel guilty. And that's the guilt in which our politicians and our, oops, you see that, and everybody else capitalizes on. So anyway, I thought that would be, now I hate trolley questions because they ignore the actual role of morality. The actual role of morality is to give you principles by which to guide your life towards the achievement of your values and towards the achievement of your life and ultimately your happiness. It's supposed to give you principles to guide your life in the achievement of your happiness. Not about, if you're on a trolley and you can kill 5 people versus 10 people, what would you choose? That's just ridiculous. That has nothing to do with morality. What principle is there? Kill fewer, not more? What if in the few there's a pregnant woman? What if in the few there are children and many they're old people? It's ridiculous. There's no moral arguments there. All right. Oh, I see a bunch of you. A bunch of you are tweeting Elizabeth Wong. Excellent. Keep it up. As I said, it would be great if you could do it every day for a few weeks. Let her know that we're pissed off at her. I like that Joseph Kellard is actually calling it from the Yaron Brook Twitter army. Yes, so now we have a Yaron Brook Twitter army. Okay, let's do super chats quickly. I've been listening for, this is the gun rights question. All right, what is my opinion on gun rights? I believe you have a right to defend yourself. Oh, let's take a step back. I think civilization requires, freedom requires, capitalism requires, but freedom requires that the government have a monopoly over the use of retaliatory force. That the government is the final arbitrator when it comes to force. That the government resolves disputes. That unless it's an emergency in which your life is threatened, in which you don't have the time to call the police, you should not, as an individual, use deadly force. That is the government's job. And it's the government's job to make sure that it does it objectively. As a consequence of that, I think the government has a responsibility to monitor and to have a say into anything regarding force in a society, including the weapons its citizens hold. So I don't think you should be able to own a tank or an F-15 or a nuclear bomb or a very, very large machine gun that can only be used for offensive attack. I think the government should have a role in regulating the kind of weapons you can have for self-defense. And that means that I think the primary regulation of those kind of weapons should be done on a state-by-state, even local-by-local level, not at the federal level. Right? So, for example, if you live on in the wilderness, then the police are not going to be there. It's going to be tough for them to arrive. It's far for them to come. You need more, if you will, weaponry than if you live somewhere where the police are everywhere. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't have any weapons, but it means that the standards for what weapons you have should be based on some standards related to the requirements of self-defense. If you live in a place where the criminals around you have M16s, then and the police is ineffectual in dealing with them, then maybe you should have an M16. But so it should be in a proportion to the threat you face and the availability of police to you, of the legitimate bearer of force in a society. Now, I don't have specifics beyond that, because beyond that, it is a question for legal philosophy. And this is what Ayn Rand's view of gun rights was. This is an area where the philosophy of law needs to figure it out. But she said this is not an easy area, and I agree. And I think it very much depends on locality. It very much depends on crime rates. It very much depends on the availability of police. So I don't agree with the Democrats who want to ban all guns, and I don't believe in those libertarians, objectivists, and conservatives who want people to have all guns. There needs to be some solution, and it needs to be figured out, again, I think on the local level rather than the federal level, and needs to be handled on a local level rather than the federal level. Now, I could go on and on about guns, but I'm not going to. You can watch a video I made called Why Objectivism is Why Applying Objectivism is Hard, or something like that, where I talk for about 20 minutes about guns and what I think they constitute and why I think the government should be involved and to what extent I think government should be involved. But yeah, you should be able to own a gun to defend yourself. Something like a shotgun or a pistol. Shotgun is a good self-defense weapon, probably the best. Sometimes you got to thread a needle. Sometimes there is no all or nothing solution. Sometimes it's some. And the principle is self-defense, not militias, armed rebellion. That can't be the reason. That can't be the justification for owning guns. Do you have any good references about government inefficiency? I mean, they're everywhere. I don't have a book right available, but look at every industry, study every industry that has been run by the government. There are an endless number of examples, books, articles about this. One example is to read that has a lot of references is Capitalism, Not Known Ideal by Ayn Rand. Capitalism, Not Known Ideal. Have you heard of the book Creating Christ, How Roman Emperors Created Christianity? Also, thanks for recommending Body by Science. Once I move, my roommate and I are going to learn the program and do it at home. Cool. Excellent. It's hard to do at home. I'll just say that. It's very hard to do at home because you need specific equipment, but you can do certain things at home. I have heard of the book Creating Christ, How Roman Empires Created Christianity. I haven't read it yet. It's by James Valiant. Just the title, I'm tempted to agree with it. I don't think that's crazy. I don't think it's a crazy thesis. Valiant is a very thoughtful guy and has done his research. He's a former prosecutor, so a former lawyer, prosecutor. So he knows how to do research. He's looked at this, and I'm sure there's a lot of good evidence for what he is suggesting in the book, and that is that, in a sense, Christ as we know him never existed and is a creation of Roman emperors, and it makes sense to me. It was a way for Roman empires, certainly starting from Constantine and maybe before that, to maintain control. First they needed an enemy, and then they needed a justification to rule. And they used Christianity for both. These are the kind of questions I don't like to answer, and I might not. You seem to say that Biddle needed to let Pagan know his morality was evil. Some people said he did, so I don't know. If Biddle did not do that, was he wrong to do the interview? Yes, I think not expressing the degree to which the ideas and the morality of religion is evil on a debate about religion, I think is wrong. But I haven't watched the interview, so I don't know the extent to which that was done or not, and how it was done. And again, there are different ways that you can do that. You don't have to shake the guy up and punch him in the nose and say your philosophy or your morality is evil. So I don't know what Craig did. If pure capitalism consistently led to a worse outcome in terms of human flourishing than socialism, would you still be in favor of capitalism? Yes, but it's also impossible. Because capitalism is based on a morality of human flourishing, of individual human flourishing. It's the idea of capitalism as a good, as objectivism derives it, is grounded on a morality of individual flourishing. So all capitalism is the political system in which individuals are allowed to flourish. Now, if it turns out that in a particular time and at a particular place, those individuals choose not to flourish, act against their interest, that's their problem. That doesn't refute capitalism, and I'd still be for it. So people have to live up to the standard of capitalism, not change their nature. I'm not like a communist where they have to change human nature. No, they have to live up to their own nature as a rational being in order to be able to flourish under capitalism. Have you heard about Rwandan genocide report today? The historians point to France's overwhelming responsibilities. Any chances you would talk about similar failures of that sort? Let me look into that and see exactly what they mean by that before I comment on that. So I've saved the question for a future show, and I'll do a little bit of research and look it up. I've been thinking about this a lot, and if you don't do it right, a meme is really just context-dropping propaganda. Be honest out there, guys. Absolutely. I mean, memes are, I think, useless, right? I think they're fun. They create a little, but they're not. What did Leonard Peikoff famously say? A picture is not an argument. A picture with a couple of words is not an argument either. It can stimulate, it can interest, it can get people's attention, can't change anybody's mind, not in a fundamental sense. This is Amazon on Bernie Sanders. Quote, there's a big difference between talk and action. Senator Sanders has been a powerful politician in Vermont for 30 years and their minimum wage still $11.75. Amazon is $15. Plus great health care from day one. Sanders would rather talk in Alabama than act in Vermont. I mean, I think that's true, sad that Amazon is advocating for $15 minimum wage. So pointing out politicians' hypocrisy is not that great. What I liked about the tweet about Elizabeth Warren is they were pointing out her authoritarian nature. Did you objectively value your life enough on hitchhiking trip, or was the risk-taking an aspect of your valuing it? I mean, ex post, if I'd known everything that happened would happen on the hitchhiking trip, I would not have done it. That is, it was too risky. And by the end of it, I swore I would never do anything quite like that again. So if I had the knowledge of the extent of the risk, I would not do it. I valued my life too much for that. I think that answers. But on the other hand, taking risk is part of valuing your life. Sometimes it's too risky, like in the hitchhiking. And maybe the trip to Beirut, which nobody has asked me about, nobody's put enough money behind for me to tell yet. Maybe in a future show. But that's exposed, it's easier to tell. But taking risk generally, even risk with your life sometimes, is part of living. It's part of living. Right? Risk is part of life. if you're not willing to take risks, it's hard to really live life to the fullest. Risks in all aspects, in business, in pleasure, in relationships, in every aspect of your life. Risk-taking is an important, crucial part of it. Indeed, one of the real dangers in modern society, one of the real dangers among young people in modern society, is the desire to live in a riskless world, to take risk out of the equation. Without risk, there's no benefit. In a debate, you say you focus on the audience, not your opponent. But in Ritpat's debate, was it right for him to say, I've had it with you people? Yes, but not because he hoped it would have an effect on his opponents. I think Ritpat was aware enough of the audience to know the effect that would have on his audience. It was to show moral indignation to the audience, to show the audience how much he cared, how much the debate was important to him, to show his audience that he was sick of these people, sick of these views, and that he took it seriously. So again, he was targeting the audience, not his opponent. What difference does it make what the opponents thought of that? What do you say to those who claim that it's been shown that torture doesn't get reliable information? I'd say they don't know what they're talking about. Yes, often torture gives you bad information, and every torturer knows that. But there are torture techniques. You can see them on 24. You can see them on Fauda. You can see them in a variety of different places that are better than others. You have to check your information, but it's not, there's no evidence that under emergency circumstances, this is not the fastest way to get the information you need. Now, sometimes it'll give you bad information. Sometimes it will backfire. Not always. It's a risk. You have to take that into account. The alternative is not torturing, not getting the information. That you know the risk of that. That's incredibly risky. The nuclear bomb goes off. Yeah, I'm talking about the fiction show 24. But no, there's a reason why torture has been used by the most advanced military forces in the world. The only period in which studies came out to say it's unreliable, and only places where that came out, are because of morality. Because we wimped out, because we decided it wasn't appropriate or civilized for us to do it. And we looked for practical reasons why it wasn't. So we made them up. All right. Thanks, everybody. Unless there's somebody who wants to jump in with a Super Chat question, we are done for tonight. I'll be on tomorrow at 3 o'clock. We have our Super Chat and contributor Q&A. Don't forget to bring your checkbook tomorrow with some good Super Chat questions with good dollar amounts. By the way, anybody who wants to do another challenge, match, would love to do that. I think those are fun. Not too often, but maybe once every couple of months. We haven't had one since the epic one on December 31st. So if anybody wants to contribute some money to do a challenge match on one of these days, let me know. All right, everybody. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night. And I will see you all tomorrow, 3 p.m. East Coast time. Bye, everybody.